everybody, I'm home. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the hospital where I've been taken in to see why the right side of my face is slightly inflamed. Before my hospitalization, I went to the movie theater a couple times, 5 times. First movie we're going to be talking about today is Spider-Man No Way Home, the big event of, I don't know where this is going. So this is a movie that has been pretty hyped up. A lot of Marvel stuff since Endgame has been really not that, hasn't really gotten people pumped up other than like, I think WandaVision. Personally, I haven't really partaken in any Marvel since Endgame. I just haven't had an interest in anything that they put out. But I decided to watch this because I like Spider-Man, and I was curious what they're gonna do with Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina and all the old actors. This is a really fun movie. I was actually shocked how much I did like this movie. It did some things I definitely didn't expect, which is not something that you often get from a Marvel movie. It toes the line between looking back, but also looking forward at what is to come next. And it's a really difficult thing to do, so I respect this movie for being able to do that. The movie's definitely biased towards Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin, Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus, and Jamie Foxx as Electro. So Lizard, the actor of whom I can't remember his name, and Sandman, who's I can't remember his actor's name. I'm terrible at this, my god. They have like moments, but they both kind of get shafted a little bit. They kind of get, shifted off to the side because people there, I guess they were like, who gives a shit? I really, really loved Willem Dafoe in this movie. He always does a great job, and I think here in particular, you can tell he's having a lot of fun being able to return to this sort of hammy, really cheesing it up in this one. But he also manages to be a kind of threat. He is like the main antagonist, and so he kind of manages to really feel like a force, a threat. But he's also so fun to watch. He really does. No one does it better than Willem Dafoe, I'm gonna be honest. Spoilers, I guess. I feel like if you wanted to see this movie, you would have already seen it at this point. Everyone on the internet's already just decided to say fuck it to spoiler alert. So, obviously Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield return in this movie as Spider-Man, and they were both good. They were both a lot of fun, and they both do a good job. Andrew Garfield in particular, this movie really has a bit of a streak of, it seems, trying to sort of redeem the Amazing Spider-Man characters, because those movies kind of suck ass. And in this movie, you can really tell they're making an effort to make Andrew Garfield Spider-Man and Electro in particular kind of redeem their characters. Obviously, Andrew Garfield's character gets a nice moment of sort of closure in this movie, which I quite liked. Tom Holland himself does a great job in this movie. He's always been a good Spider-Man, but I would never say he did a great performance. But I really do think that he really shows his talent in this one. The ending as a whole, by the way, is kind of what I think elevates this movie for me, just because it is one of the rare Marvel movies that feels like it has consequence. Because so many of these MCU movies are just building up and hinting and teasing at other things that you end up just being like, well, why the fuck was the point of this one? This movie actually has stakes and a payoff and consequence in it, and that is so refreshing. And it really, by the end, even despite some issues I had, it was still really well done, and I was still feeling some emotion. It was really well done. There is some dumb shit in this movie that annoyed me a little bit. Stuff where you could obviously tell they didn't know how to get where they were going, so they just sort of wrote some dumb shit in there. Main thing I'm thinking about is the Lizard, when they all go to the apartment, when Peter's bringing all the villains to the apartment to try and fix them. The Lizard just asks to stay in the van, and he's like, okay. He's still a villain. He's still a bad guy. Why the fuck would you just leave him alone? And then also, I wish they had, I know that it's not like super important, but I wish they had gone a little bit more in depth with how the spell at the end works to make everyone forget about Peter Parker. Obviously everyone forgets him, but like they didn't undo everything that happened with his identity being revealed. So like, wouldn't people just look at, you know, the news on the Daily Bugle from a day ago and see news about Peter Parker being Spider-Man? People remember Spider-Man, but they don't remember Peter Parker. So like, Happy still remembers Aunt May, even though, but like, how does he think that he knows her now? Because he doesn't remember Peter Parker, and that's how he knew Aunt May. So like, how does he know Aunt May now? But this is definitely one of the best ones for sure. And so, yeah, this is a fun time. It's a fun blockbuster, the movies. It has a lot of dumb shit, but it doesn't really ruin the experience at the end of the day. So overall, I'm going to give Spider-Man No Way Home a 7 out of 10. Next is a movie that is a little smaller. It's a movie called Licorice Pizza. This is the newest film by Paul Thomas Anderson, who is a really talented director who did some great stuff like Inherent Vice, Phantom Thread, The Master. He's a talented guy. This movie is about a 15-year-old and a 25-year-old woman in the 70s who fall in love. And it's sort of about their experience in their life, you know, youth, whatever. So if that's something that bothers you, probably don't watch this one. I'll be honest, the age gap was not really something that I was thinking of when I was watching the movie, just because the boy, the guy playing the 15-year-old boy, he's older than 15, he looks older than 15, he acts older than 15, so like, why didn't you just make him like 17 or 18? Like, if you said that, I would not have, like, I don't think it would have changed the movie whatsoever. And so it just feels a little weird. This is a movie that honestly did not really work that well for me. It tries to be one of those movies that's sort of plotless in exchange for just showing vignettes of life. Just not like an anthology, but more like the plot is second to just sort of being like, it shows the experience of life. But it ends up, in my opinion, just feeling kind of meandering. This movie is way too long. This movie is like 2 hours and something, and honestly, there were multiple points throughout the movie where I thought it was over, like it was the end, but then it just keeps going. There was a point at like 90 minutes in where I legitimately thought the movie was over, and then I remembered that Bradley Cooper's character hadn't shown up yet, so the movie wasn't over, and it was a bit jarring. In a normal screenplay, you have a main plot and you have subplots going on at the same time. This movie is like if you just took all those subplots and instead of having them concurrent, you just showed them sequentially. You just did one at a time. And that's, I think, the reason why it just feels that ends up feeling repetitive, is just because it just sort of keeps going. It's just sort of the same thing over and over. The main couple like argue and break up and then get back together like 3 times in this movie, and it just starts to feel like, what are we doing here? It's just the same thing over and over. And that's not to say that I didn't like this movie. It had a lot of things that I thought were great. I really liked all of the performances, pretty much were fantastic. The main 2 lead actors especially were amazing. I really, really loved Bradley Cooper in this movie. He was hilarious. He was so fun to watch, but he ended up feeling a little wasted because he's only in the movie for like 10 minutes. It does a good job of kind of immersing you in the 70s, in this world of youth. I can totally see why someone would love this movie. I can see this being someone's comfort movie, because this is just like something, you know, I can see why someone would just want to exist in this world for a little bit with these characters. I can see that. But for me, it just didn't work. It was too long, it felt just plotless at points, and it was repetitive. It just wasn't really for me, even though I can appreciate a lot of things about it, and there were a lot of things that were really well done about it. So yeah, this one was a swing and a miss for me. I don't hate it, but I probably wouldn't recommend it unless you're really into this type of thing. So overall, I'm going to give Licorice Pizza a 4 out of 10. Next, we're going to be talking about another blockbuster, The Matrix Resurrections. This is a really weird one to talk about. This is obviously a belated fourth movie in the Matrix franchise, and it's odd. This movie is a weird mixture of a sequel, a reboot, a meta commentary on how people interpreted the first Matrix, and a commentary from Lana Wachowski about how making The Matrix made her personally feel as an artist. This movie's doing a lot. I can totally understand why someone would hate this movie, but I can also understand why someone would really, really like it. It gets really meta. And especially in the first part. And honestly, that was the part I found myself enjoying the most, was the part when Neo was still in the Matrix, and was sort of how they used the Matrix in an interesting way to kind of gaslight him and delude him. And I really liked the use of like the metaphor of flying as killing yourself as flying. It has a lot of really interesting and cool stuff that I quite like, but it also has a lot of really weird shit that I didn't like. And a Matrix movie needs action. And the action in this movie sucks. I don't know if it's that Lana Wachowski just didn't want to do the action in this one, or maybe that passion for action always came from Lily Wachowski, or whatever. But the action in this movie is not very good. It's super quick, shaky, you can't really tell what's going on sometimes. Neo is just like always, he's not really doing kung fu that much anymore. He's doing like weird force powers, which are cool, but start to become a little bit, I don't know, like diluted when you keep doing it. It becomes less effective. It works a lot more, I think, as a philosophical or satire or meta piece than as a Matrix movie. The cast is fine. The new cast is obviously trying very hard. I can't remember the name of the woman who plays Bugs, but I quite liked her. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, as per usual, is doing a fantastic job as new Morpheus, quoting. It's not really Morpheus, it's like Morpheus mixed with Smith, but yeah. The old cast, Carrie-Anne Moss is fine, Keanu Reeves is fine. But yeah, this movie is quite odd. And I'm still not sure what to make. I've watched it twice now and I'm still not quite sure what to make of it. I think I enjoy it, but it's definitely admirable that Lana Wachowski took a giant blockbuster continuation of one of the biggest franchises of all time and made it into her, just was like, this is my movie. I'm gonna do with this movie what I fucking want. And it's admirable for sure. It's got a really interesting philosophical / meta streak, but all of the kind of literal happenings in the movie are a little less interesting. So overall, I'm going to give The Matrix Resurrections a 6 out of 10. Now we're going to talk about Nightmare Alley. This is the new movie from Guillermo del Toro. It is actually a remake of an old movie from the 40s, which is based off of an even older book. It's a weird little movie about a character played by Bradley Cooper who starts working at a carnival and learns some kind of dark secrets from the local psychic about how to manipulate people. And we kind of see how he uses these skills to kind of go down a path of greed and eventually like danger. The structure of this movie threw me off at first, for sure. Because the first like hour of this movie is just about Bradley Cooper and all the characters in the carnival. It's kind of about him learning and meeting all these characters and establishing them. And then an hour in, time skips forward a few years, completely changes location. It's pretty jarring shift, and I'm not quite sure still if I like it, because honestly I liked the stuff in the circus, the carnival, more at the start than I did the latter part. The performances are all great. Bradley Cooper, in his second appearance on this list, he was great in this movie as this sort of, I really bought him being this kind of underdog to piece of shit pipeline. A lot of the other performances are really great, but the problem is that they are restricted to the first half of the movie. Willem Dafoe, who again on his second appearance in this list, is so good in this movie, but he's only in the movie for like a total of 20 or 30 minutes, and then he disappears. He never shows up again, and it's really disappointing. I really wish we got more of him. Cate Blanchett is awesome in this movie. I think my biggest problem with this movie is mostly in the structure and pacing. The last like 30 and 40 minutes are spent kind of building up to this climax. But the thing is about the climax is that the audience all knows how it's going to turn out. We know exactly what's going to happen. And it's kind of disappointing just that they didn't really twist it up at all. It ends up just being kind of exactly what you expected for the last 30 minutes. The first hour being an extended prequel kind of fucks with me a little bit, especially when I found that part to be kind of more enjoyable than the latter half. Yeah, I'm really conflicted about this one. The direction is mostly great, but again, in nearly all aspects, I liked the first hour more than I liked the rest of it, which kind of sucks. I really wish that we had stuck to that a little more. This movie is weird and pretty and has a lot of great performances, but is paced bizarrely, and I think at the end of the day, that's the best way to describe it. I'm really, really conflicted on this movie. I cannot decide if a 6 or a 7 out of 10, so I'm gonna do I don't generally like to do half scores, but I'm gonna make an exception occasionally with this one. I am going to give Nightmare Alley a 6.5 out of 10. And our final movie for today is Scream. It's 2022. This is one that I was kind of apprehensive about going in. A lot of the kind of horror reboot sequels, as they call them in Scream, of the past few years have been pretty mixed for me. Missed potential in all of those, I think, is the best way I would describe them. So I was pretty apprehensive about this one going in, especially because the trailers did not look that great. But I will say, the trailers do this movie a disservice, because this movie is far better than kind of what was shown in the trailer, especially in the opening scene. The opening scene, as it's shown in the trailer, looks stupid, but it's actually really well done in the film. And yeah, if you couldn't tell, I actually like this movie. It was pretty good. I like that this movie does some things that these other reboot sequels are kind of afraid to do, and it really leans heavily on the new characters. The focus of this movie is on the new cast. The old characters show up, but they're kind of in the background. They're used really liberally, and I like that a lot. You know, like Halloween 2018, the focus is all on Jamie Lee, and to be fair, it's her story. She is the main character. But in this movie, I enjoy that it really does feel like this is Scream for a new generation, because they really are putting so much weight on the new cast, and I think that that's where the movie really shines. The new characters are actually pretty great. I really, really liked a lot of them, especially the main sisters, the main pair of sisters who kind of drive the movie forward. The main character's boyfriend, played by Jack Quaid, is amazing. The Meeks twins, they're great. Yeah, and the sisters are just really, really interesting to watch, especially Jenny Ortega, who plays the younger sister. She is so good in this movie. She's amazing. She's probably my favorite character. She really, really sold it. There is a Scream formula that the first four all fall into, and that was really my biggest problems with 3 and 4, is that they just fell right into the formula. As soon as you find out who the killers are, you know what the rest of the movie's gonna be like. This movie, for the most part, doesn't fall into that until the third act. And I will say, after the killers are revealed in this movie, it kind of goes downhill. It just falls right back into that formula, and I was really, really hoping that this movie was going to do something different, and it doesn't really end up doing that in the climax, which was disappointing. The killers are, I'm not going to spoil them, but they're fun, but their motivation was a little on the nose, in my opinion. Like, I understand what you're trying to say. I agree with what you're trying to say, but I feel like you could be, at least try to be a little bit more subtle. So, yeah, honestly, this is probably one of, if not the best, of like the horror reboot sequels we've gotten over the past few years. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed this one. The directing duo who did this one, Radio Silence, continue to put out pretty good shit. And yeah, so that's about it for this one. And I'm going to give Scream 2022 a 7 out of 10. Well, that was movies, and pretty good ones at that. Well, that's about all I got to say for today. I'm getting out of the hospital now, so it's time for me to go. Without further ado, as per usual, I'm Teddy. My camera is currently overheating, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye. Next up, we're doing another blockbuster, The Matrix Resurrections. This fucking goddamn it, dude.